Good evening. You recognize, of course, that it is impossible to say anything to a group of practitioners and leave out anything that has been said at any time through this meeting, whether in the lecture or my class or what you have heard from the 5 girls. Every single bit of that applies to the practitioner as well as it applies to every student. In other words, nobody ever gets so advanced that they can say, I've left behind that part, or that, oh, that's simple stuff that I outgrew long ago. There is no such thing. There is no such thing as simple truth and high truth, low truth, or high truth. There is only one truth, and it is true that in presenting it, you do come up through states and stages to reach the ultimate. In other words, you don't go into a lecture and say, I am God. You don't even go into a lecture and say, thou art the Christ. You lead up step by step until you reach that climax in which you can reveal your identity to the student and then finally reveal their identity to themselves. Unveil my identity and unveil your identity. When you are speaking to your patients, your students, you have to listen for the still small voice so that you do not offend, so that you do not shock. Because it is possible to lose the student and for the student to be lost for a long, long time. Milk for the babes, meat for those who are ready for it. And at the end it says, and yet I have many, many more things to say. So that while there is but one truth, there are hundreds upon hundreds of ways of presenting truth so that you lead up to a climax and a finale. In our work, a practitioner differs from the practitioner as we have known them in metaphysics. And the reason is that in metaphysics you can be a practitioner 3 days a week from 12 to 2 or from 12 to 4, but not in the infinite way. In the infinite way, you are either a practitioner 24 hours a day or you are no practitioner. In other words, you can never get out of the practitioner consciousness. There's no such thing as taking a vacation from being a practitioner. There's no such thing as beginning to know the truth when somebody asks for help. There's no such thing as having one language when on duty and another language when off duty. Nor is it possible to sleep at night outside of the practitioner consciousness. And the reason is this, and this you must clearly understand. What you are looking at up here on this platform has no healing power. There is nothing in my mind or body that will heal anyone of anything. I, not Joel, I am the life of Joel. I am the consciousness of Joel. I am the soul of Joel. I even form that body which is the temple of Joel. I am the spirit that goes before Joel. I am the spirit that walks beside him and behind him. And when Joel goes to sleep, I am still awake. And I am not confined in Joel's body, nor am I lying in Joel's bed, because I fill all space. I am where you are. I am the soul of the universe. I am just as much in Africa, in China, in England, in Australia, in New Zealand, as I am in Chicago. No more of me, no less of me. The allness of me is everywhere equally present, for I am spirit. I am consciousness. I am not entombed in a body. I was once upon a time. But I have risen. In my first spiritual experience, I was lifted out of the body into the recognition of my spiritual identity. And I have lived forever and forever in the realization that I am I. And I am spirit. And it is for this reason that when anyone reaches out to me for help, it may be in the middle of the night where I'm sleeping, and it may be the middle of the day where they are. But their help does not have to wait until I awaken, nor does it have to wait until I receive their message, because there's nothing Joel can do about their message except to acknowledge it and say, rest assured, I'm helping. But there's no reason for them to wait until they receive that message to feel better. So it is that in our work, our students must know the nature of I, because this is the secret of the infinite way. This is the deep, deep secret of the infinite way. This is what was hidden from the world. Now, Moses learned this. Moses received this illumination on what is called the mountaintop, which probably means during a state of illumination. And he came face to face with the fact that I am I. I am that I am. And he was no longer a man. He was God being, the Son of God, Christ. And you can prove this by the fact that no man could have brought the Hebrews out of Pharaoh's land into the promised land. No man could have done that because Pharaoh had a great big army, a powerful army, and Pharaoh had no desire to let loose of his good laborers. Somehow the Hebrews of always had a good reputation for being good workers. And he wasn't going to let loose of them. And yet, without an army, without might or without power, Moses led them right out from under his nose. A man could not have done that. That was the I functioning through and as Moses. Moses could never have created a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. There have been some magicians on the stage who may have done that, but Moses couldn't do it because he wasn't a magician. But the Spirit of God, when it is recognized as omnipresence, appears as the form necessary to the immediate experience. And so Moses' recognition of the omnipresence of I appeared as a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, as manna falling from the sky, as water coming from a rock. It has been falsely written that Moses could not enter the promised land with the Hebrews because of some mistake that he made. You can't imagine Moses making any mistake greater than the thief on the cross, and yet he was going to get into heaven this very night. No, that's not true. The reason that Moses could not lead the Hebrews into the promised land is that nobody can ever lead another into the promised land. That last mile you have to take yourself. Moses was already in the promised land from the very moment that he realized I. He was already in heaven. He was already immune from might and from power. In fact, he was immune from the law. Every law operated against the Hebrew people, and Moses nullified all of them. No, he couldn't take the Hebrew people into the promised land any more than later Jesus could take even his disciples into the ascension. In fact, he could only take 3 into the realization of eternal life, immortality. Only 3 were taken with him to behold the eternal life of the Hebrew prophets, who were supposedly dead years before. No one can take another into the promised land. You can take them up to the promised land, and then they must cross over through the understanding of I. There comes a time in the life of every student when they realize that the consciousness of the teacher is also the consciousness of the student, and that there is only one. And that is why in the Orient, especially in India, the really great teachers, gurus, very early reveal to their students that I am now your guru, and you must obey me, and you must follow my teachings. You must be constantly in accord with me. But remember that the reason is that I am leading you to where you meet the guru within you. And only through humility and service and dedication and obedience, through surrender of your own will. You see, the guru never asks anything of a student that the teacher themselves would not do. That is why the master bathed the feet of the disciples, to show that he would never ask or expect anything of them that in turn he wouldn't do for them. But inasmuch as you do surrender your will and your way to your teacher, knowing that your teacher will never mislead you, misguide you, then and then only can you be led to the guru, the teacher within you. Now, no message in the history of the last 1700 years reveals the nature of the Gospel of John, which is the Advaita of India, to the effect that I am the bread, the meat, the wine, the water. I am the resurrection. I am life eternal. I am come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. Doesn't mean Jesus. It means I. Everywhere else you will find it as indicating that Jesus was the Lord, that Jesus was the Christ, that Jesus was the Savior, that Jesus was the way. But the secret is that I am. And that is why you have the statement given in our work this week. There is no power in heaven or on earth or in hell greater than I am. Oh, I know there might have been some students go out of here and say, Joel says he's the greatest power on earth. But Joel didn't say that at all. Joel said, I am. Once you understand this, you understand the whole secret of the infinite way, of the Advaita of India, of the Zen of Japan. You understand the whole works. Once you understand the impersonal nature of I, once you stop pinning spirituality onto a man and saying, oh, thou art good, or thou art spiritual, or thou art perfect. How nonsensical can you get? I am spirit. I am perfect. I and my Father are one. I am in the secret place of the Most High. Ah, that is an impersonal revelation because it permits you to state that. It doesn't pin it on to any individual. It proclaims it as a universal truth. Now, Moses knew this, and Moses demonstrated it in taking the Hebrew people out of slavery across the wilderness and up to the promised land where, if they could have grasped the word I, they would have walked right in. Well, there were a few Hebrew prophets between Moses and Jesus who knew this. There is one in particular of whom we will learn a lot more later as the years go on. But the one we are interested in right now is Christ Jesus. He caught this in its fullness. And because of this, he made spiritual teachers and disciples out of ordinary fishermen. He took people out of sickness, out of sin, out of lack. And he had quite a following to whom he gave their permanent freedom, those who followed the disciples and their disciples for 300 years. As long as the teaching remained among men, that I and my Father are one, and in that oneness is my fulfillment, the message spread. Between 300 and 400 A.D., King Constantine, noting the degree of freedom among the Hebrews and having no control over them or those they taught, decided to bring them into line. And he couldn't do it with soldiers or beating them or imprisoning them, because they were beyond feeling such things. And so he conceived the brilliant idea of organizing them. And he reached some of the priests and sold them on the idea of organizing a religion. And what particularly appealed to them was that he promised if they would organize it, he would make it the state religion, and everybody would have to belong to it, be a Christian. Everybody that was born would have to be born into it. No more proselyting, no more preaching, no more getting members, no more looking for supply. By state's decree, you are a Christian and you must pay for it. And so they formed a church, and they had a council to draw up a Bible. And they told these men what they wanted in the Bible, what must be left out and what could be included in. And the book from which the master taught was not allowed to be included in the Bible and is not in the Bible. That which Jesus Christ used as his Bible is not a part of our Bible. It was excluded. And copies were destroyed and copies were hidden. And what wisdom he had when he said, "My word shall never pass away." They have found 3 copies of it. Within the next couple of years, we will all have copies of it. And it is a book that embraces not only the Hebrew wisdom, but the Persian, the Arabic, and the Hindu wisdom. It is what you might call the infinite way of 2,000 years ago. It combines the West, the East, and the Near East. through this book, Jesus was enabled to reveal that the way is I, and no man can come to heaven by any other way than I. You see how easy it is to manipulate that and say, by any other way than Jesus? But it never said that at all. It said I. Nobody can enter in. Whoever tries to enter in by any other way than I is a thief and a robber. He's trying to cheat you of your birthright. For there is no God but me. I know not any. I am he. And the moment you realize I am he, you will understand God in the midst of you. You will understand why God in the midst of you is mighty. You will understand why Paul could say, I live, yet not I, Christ liveth my life. The Spirit of God, the I, the self, the soul. You will understand why Saroyan could say, I find lately that I am not living my own life. Something else is living it, and I am going along for the ride. And so do we discover. Something is living our lives, and we are going along for the ride. And that something is bringing to us physical wholeness, mental wholeness, moral wholeness, financial wholeness. And we look at it all and we wonder, how did I ever get that? Because I'm not capable personally of bringing it about. It is very much like looking at this room this week. More than 500 people drawn here, most of them from far and wide at great expense. And you know, Joel couldn't have done that. Nor could our 5 girls have brought them all together in this room to hear them. Just because they were in town for Joel does not mean that they would have come in to hear them. No, these girls didn't draw them in either. That same spirit in Joel which drew them here, that same spirit in them drew them into the room to hear them. Never believe for a moment that what these girls experienced was my demonstration, because it wasn't. My demonstration was the more than 500 who came to my class. That was the demonstration of the Spirit in me. But that they also came to hear the girls is their demonstration. I can assure you, if there had been one of them lacking in that realization of the Christ, that one would not have had them. That's what I mean by I. No Joel could have made their demonstration for them. No Joel could have made them successful practitioners, which all of them are. No Joel could have done anything like that for them. Joel can only lead them to the promised land, but they must walk in under their own recognition of the I that I am. You know, I have been witnessing for years students going into the work and then going out of it and sort of feeling that I'm responsible because I didn't help them. They don't really believe that I can't help them. They don't really believe that I can occasionally recommend someone to go to them, but I cannot be sure that after I recommend them that they'll go, or that if they go that they will stay. And I know that a lot of students do not believe that. They really believe that I have influence. Well, you know, if I thought I had that kind of influence, I'd put all the Infinite Way study centers in the monthly letter, and all the names in the letter. But you see, in the European edition of the letter, that is the British edition, for several years we have had all of the centers listed and all of the tape groups. We've taken it all out. We've taken it. All it got to be was a directory. But it didn't influence anyone. Oh no. If any man tells you that there is any way to enter the Spirit of God, the demonstration of God, except by the way of I, he's a thief and a robber. He's trying to take advantage of your gullibility. True. The moment the Christ is raised up in me, it becomes an influence unto you. And the more you submit yourself to that Christ of me, the further along the path you are going to go. But you're never going to go further than the entrance to the promised land until the realization dawns within you, I am he. I am he. I am that I am. And then you'll know that that is what Joel realized, that is responsible for the fact that one lone individual could have brought this work to a worldwide basis. One lone individual could have witnessed it, financed, published, could have witnessed 60,000 homes attracted to it, the sale of over 1 million copies of its books. One individual could witness that through the recognition of the Christ. One individual could raise up these teachers in the United States, in England, in Germany. One. And there's no limit to what one can do, except one thing. That one cannot carry you into the temple of God. That you do on your own realization, and then you'll discover that what Moses did for the Hebrews, what Jesus did for his followers, what Mrs. Eddy did for her followers, what this work has done, that any one of you can do. And without limit, as long as you are understanding that I am doing it, and that Joel is a beholder watching it take place. It's nice to be a beholder because you get all the credit and some of the profit. In fact, all that's left over from Uncle Sam. But inwardly, you always know it is not I. If I speak of myself, I bear witness to a lie. It's that realization of I. I is the bread, the meat, the wine, the water. I is the power of resurrection. And so you find in the practice, when you are up against serious illnesses, when you are up against businessmen with difficulties, marital cases with difficulties, you will know why the Master said, I can of my own self do nothing, because that's right where you'll find yourself. And that's when it is that you'll have to close your eyes and say, thank God, there is no power in heaven or on earth or in hell greater than I am, and then relax and rest. But I am is in the midst of me, and my I am is in the midst of my patient. I am is in the midst of my student. I am is in the midst of the business world. I am is in the midst of everything. This is why meditation is the Bible of the infinite way. Because only in that meditation can the voice speak to you and say, I assure you and reassure you. But never lose sight of this, because you'll find it nowhere except in the infinite way message. God is the consciousness of individual being, and therefore the consciousness of you individually is infinite. And in meditation you can go within and draw forth all of the infinity that is there. You must never forget that with your eyes closed you are in the corridor. And you have access to infinity. Not by might, not by power, but by being still and knowing that I am God, and then let that I speak. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Why are there so many infinite way books? As a matter of fact, I could take all of the infinite way writings and boil them down to about a 500-page book and make a textbook of it. But it would be unwise. It would be as unwise as giving another formula like the scientific statement of being, something that people could hold in their mind and hold on to. Because the minute you can hold it in your mind and hold on to it, you've lost it. The moment you are depending on a statement of truth, you've lost your God. The moment you are holding on to a synonym for God, you have lost your God. Until every concept is dropped from your thought, and until you are hanging your world on nothing, no thing, no statement, no truth, just a stillness, you have not arrived. As long as you believe there is a synonym for God that is truth, you're wrong. And you have no God. You have a word up in your mind. As long as you believe there is a quotation that will make your demonstration, you're wrong. And you've lost your God. I think right now of an experience that we had this past year. You will notice all through the writings a quotation He performeth that which is appointed for me to do. I myself didn't know the meaning of it until this past year. I've been using it for 30 years. Shows how we can be blind to our own because of our concepts. I thought it really meant that God did that which I'm supposed to do. But just during this past year, I learned that's not true. He performs that which He gives me to do. He performs His own work in me or through me. He doesn't perform my work. He doesn't perform anything that's my will or my way or my desire. He performeth that which He appointeth for me. And therefore, unless I am abiding in, nevertheless not my will, but thine be done, unless I'm absolutely keeping myself clear of wanting to do something or accomplish something or be something, I have no access to God's grace. God's grace only functions to perform God's will, not my will, and not my desire, and not my hope, and not my ambition. Therefore, I am only under God's grace when I am letting God perform its work through me. Not help me with my work, but perform its own work through me. You'll be surprised what a difference it makes in your life once you realize that there's no God around to help you. God is only around to perfect his own work through you. He's not around to perfect your work or my work. His only function is to perform his work or its work. And therefore, only when we are definitely in attunement. How do we know when we're in attunement? When there's no I around. No personal sense of I that wants something, desires something, hopes for something. When we can become a complete blank for the Spirit to work through us to its will, that's when we can know that we are in attunement, in at one-ment. But as long as there is an I, Joel, around, there is no spiritual attunement. That is why I repeat the story of having had 5 practitioners work for me in my last year of the business world and then ended up with no money. It wasn't because they weren't good practitioners. They were. It was only that I wanted them to get God to do my will and give me good business. And God doesn't know anything about my business. God only knows about God's will. And the moment that I was still enough to listen to God's will, I was back on the beam again with an income. Only now, not through business, but through the practice. It shouldn't be necessary for us to get it the hard way, but it was for me because I was still in that stage where I thought there was a God to do my will. I only had to turn to God and God would prosper me. Why me? It's a mystery now how anyone could think that there's a God to prosper me or you and not all the rest of the world. But there is no such thing. God is here only to prosper the will of God and the way of God and the function of God. And our function is to be the servant of God, the instrument, the transparency as which God can work. The moment we think that God has prospered me, we've lost God. The moment we think that God has done this good to me, we have lost God. Because God's good is not addressed to anybody, any place. I know we're very apt to get the idea that God sent all of the oil to the Rockefellers. But that isn't so. They merely took what was there. But God didn't have their name on it. So please understand that God does not send good to you or me. God's good is a universal good to which we attune ourselves. You can compare it to the sunshine. The sun doesn't shine on your garden or mine. It doesn't shine for you or me. The sun shines. If we want it, we put ourselves in the way of the sun. But it is not going to go around the corner looking for us to deliver light and heat. All these things the practitioner must know. And above all, our practitioners must know the impersonal nature of the I, so that we too can go to prison if necessary and say to the men, I behold Christ incarnate in you. We must not be shocked at sin. We must not be shocked at man's deviltry. We must be able to look through it and realize that it's all possible in a sense of separation from God, where self-preservation is the first law of nature. But see what happens to it once you realize I. It isn't only that I am he, I am you, I am thou. What I do unto you, I do unto myself. What I do not do unto you, I do not do unto myself, and is not done. And in that is oneness. But the practitioner must find gentle, simple ways of revealing this to the patient or the student without coming outright as boldly, as brazenly as this, until the time comes for the unveiling. There comes a time when everyone who is seriously on this path is entitled to know the full and complete truth unveiled. How can you tell when a student is ready for it? It's the simplest thing in the world. The simplest thing in the world. If you only knew why there are so few of you in this room now, and there were so many a couple of hours ago, if you only knew the reason for it, you'd know how simple it is. In your relationship with patient and student, you feel a givingness, an outpouring, a dedication. You feel that they're studying, whether it's books or letters or tapes or lectures or lessons or teachers. You feel them giving themselves to it. You feel them giving themselves to you. You feel an outpouring from them. You feel their love of God. You feel their love of the message, their support. Spiritual support, financial support. They withhold nothing. And you feel that. You feel that flow, and you say, come on, I have more to tell you. More to tell you, ever more to tell you, until you bring them to the point of the unveiling. And that's the whole answer. That is why so many write me and receive the answer no, and others write and receive the answer yes. I cannot give myself until the student has given themselves. I have to feel their givingness, their outpouring, their dedication before I can let myself go. I'm always holding back. I'm always, probably in the Master's words, I'm acting out. I don't think it consciously, but I cannot give pearls to the unprepared thought. It is like some of our art gems at home. They're there and they're on the... I can't show them to everybody that comes in the house because there's no feeling for them, and I know there isn't. I can sense it. So I never show them, never mention it. Same with my library. I have some treasures in my library. There are lots of people who come to the home and never see them. I can't. I just cannot give something sacred onto the unprepared thought. And so it is, I have to feel in a student their givingness, their dedication, their love. When I feel that, there's no limit to the return. And so it is, someday, and strange that the Bishop of Woolwich should have made the remark that someday we'll discover we don't need a God. Why do we need a God? Why? Isn't the spiritual kingdom intact? And isn't it within me closer than breathing? And isn't it functioning? What else do I need beside that which is already functioning? Is there a supreme being somewhere? Of course there isn't. The only supreme being there is, I am. And I am the only supreme being there is. But not supreme over anything or anybody. Who made me a judge over you? And if I am a master, it is only in proportion as I am a servant. The degree in which I am willing to be a servant of the Most High determines how much of a master I am. Therefore, a master is merely a fancy title given to a good servant. There is not a master and a servant. The master is the servant, and the servant is the master. The master is merely a title given to one who serves. So you see, there is no supreme being. There is no need for a supreme being. There can't be a supreme being, or there'd have to be two beings. And there is only one being, one infinite being, and I am He. There is no power in heaven, on earth, and hell greater than I am. Infinite, universal, divine, I am. When this secret is known, God has been unveiled. Truth has been unveiled. The veil has been removed. The veil consists of personalizing God. The moment you start thinking of Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, John, or anyone else as deific, the veil is back on. For nobody is deific but I am. For I am He. There is but one I. There is but one He. In the infinite way, we broke precedent by calling God it. Now, it isn't that the infinite way is the only teaching that ever used the word it, because it appears quite a few times in ancient teachings, not as a general thing, but it's there. And the reason that the infinite way did that was to break down that sense of a male God, father, or a female God, mother, or a combination father-mother God, all of which gives God a personal or human sense, as if God really were a father or a mother, which God isn't. And therefore, to get away from the male and the female sense of God, to try to bring forth God as universal being, neither male nor female, it was necessary to use the word it. But when we come to the unveiling, we do away with the word it. We go beyond the word it. For God isn't it. God is I. If God were it, there would be I and it. And there would be it and I. God is not it. I is God. And there is none other beside me. And if you let me dwell in you, you will bear fruit richly. Not it, me. If you let it dwell in you, you have another word, just another synonym. And heaven knows there are too many synonyms already. So we break down that human sense of God, a sense of a human mother, only a little more so, or a human father, only a little more so. We break that down with the word it, but when we come to the final unveiling, we remove the it. And then there's nothing left but me. I, myself alone. Thank you.